prevent the registration of released elephants.
On to your top story tonight, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has instructed for the existing quarantine curfew to be lifted on the 1st of October.
Army Commander General Shavindra Silva said that the President had instructed to lift the quarantine curfew in the country at 4 a.m. on the 1st of October. Guidelines that the public should follow will be issued in the future.
Although the country will be reopened, it cannot operate under normal conditions. It will operate under the new normal. New proposals will include an amendment to the existing guidelines as far as the limits on numbers are concerned.
Booster shots receives approval of the National Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases.
Booster dose එකයි තුන්වෙනි මාත්‍රාව කියන්නේ දෙකක්. ඒ සඳහා වුන් අපිට නිර්ණය කියන්න.
The booster dose and the third jab of the vaccine are two things. We have received guidelines on that. We have decided to provide a booster dose to everyone above the age of 60. It has also been recommended to provide a booster shot to people suffering with various ailments between the age of 30 and 60. We need to provide a third jab of the vaccine to people who have been diagnosed with cancer or kidney disease or any other disease that would reduce their immunity. We got approval for that as well. They approved the provision of the booster dose to medical staff and other frontline workers. We hope to give them the Pfizer vaccine.
ලබා දෙන්නත් ඕන් අනුමැතිය අපිට ලබා දුන්නා. Pfizer එකක් තමයි අපි දෙන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
The Ministry of Health has issued the updated quarantine measures for travellers arriving in Sri Lanka during the COVID-19 pandemic that is currently prevalent in the country.
According to the guidelines, Sri Lankan citizens do not require to obtain prior approval from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Civil Aviation Authority to arrive in the country. The updated guidelines cover quarantine measures, pre-departures, PCR tests, vaccination cards, fully vaccinated travellers, procedures to follow on arrival, among other aspects. Sri Lanka is looking to open up the country for tourism after the current island-wide lockdown is lifted.
A media briefing was held at the UNICEF office in Colombo today to mark World Children's Day, and the difficulties faced by children in Sri Lanka during the COVID-19 pandemic was highlighted at the event.
Christian Scooge, the representative of the UNICEF for Sri Lanka, attended the media briefing. The UNICEF highlighted the importance of reopening schools as soon as possible and urged the government to take the appropriate measures to do so.
We want schools to open as soon as possible. All appropriate measures should be taken. In Sri Lanka, 69% of households with children report that their children are learning less or a lot less than they were pre-pandemic. It's the time they are able to spend, but also the connectivity issue, the ability to, and for the parents to accompany their child because they have to work at the same time. So it hampered the ability to continue learning. The poor households, the more disadvantaged households are more affected than the better off. That's a real issue. We know that just over 40% of the households have access to online equipment. It doesn't mean that if you have several children that they can all be following this. If you have one computer, that's great. But if you have 4 children, how do they share that time? That affects the ability to interact and to continue the learning.
Is there really an impending attack on churches in the island? According to the Ministry of Defence, there is no need to panic. Where did this information come from? Here are the details.
A warning issued by a Navy officer of a possible attack at the St. Nicholas Church in Bopitia, Vattala yesterday has raised some eyebrows. The Ministry of Defence today, through a press release, stated that the information on a possible attack on a church was not verified by those officials. The press release quoted the Secretary General of Defence, retired General Kamal Gunaratne, reassuring the public that there is no reason to panic. One person came inside and told me that a senior officer is calling me as the priest has gone out. When I went near the vehicle, the officer who seemed like the senior officer said that there is a threat of churches being attacked similar to the attack of Zaharan, and when we came here to inform the priest, he said that the attackers may be dressed like Catholic priests, or they could be among those strangers who visit the church. They asked me to be vigilant of that. When I said that the priest will be coming back in a while, they didn't stay back. I asked him for his number. He gave me a number. He left after that. The officers who left the premises on that day returned to the premises of the church last evening. A team from the Navy camp in Uswatake came to inquire on this matter in the evening. They inquired on this matter from me and checked the CCTV camera. In the end, they told me that this team came from the Valisara camp. They told me that there was a mistake and they left. When inquired on this incident, Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy Vice Admiral Nishanta Ulugethanna said that this series of incidents is being looked into. The Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy pointed out that this was a miscommunication, that steps were taken to rectify the matter. Minister of Public Securities Sarath Weerasekara, commenting on the matter, said that this was a result of a misunderstanding.
The
intelligence that has been passed on to fathers by the officials of the Sri Lanka Navy was vital. If someone says that intelligence was a mistake after receiving it, there is a serious threat posed to the national security of the country. Is this what is expected to happen in the process of ensuring national security? If there is a threat of an impending attack, either the Ministry of Defence or the Intelligence Service must appoint someone who could inform the Cardinal about this. These officials have visited the fathers based on some directive by a higher authority. They must have been instructed to go to these particular areas to inform the churches. So where did this go wrong? That has to be looked into. This is not a joke. This is a serious matter.
Reports surfacing of an incident of this nature in an area that is regarded as a tourist attraction were also highlighted during the media briefing.
This area is a tourist attraction. Will tourists visit Sri Lanka after hearing such news? All of this will be connected in the future. Who in the government will be responsible for this? Who do we go to? Later that evening, officials from the Uswatake checkpoint came and apologized. They come in the morning and informed us that there will be an attack, and the same people come in the evening and apologize before us for a mistake. The commander of the Sri Lanka Navy has called the Cardinal in the evening and had apologized regarding this. We are embarking on the festive season in a few months. Tourists will visit Sri Lanka. This incident will have an impact in the coming few months.
The organization to protect Muthurajavela convened a media briefing at the St. Nicholas Church in Bopitia and criticized the agreement to award the supply of LNG in the country to an American company. They pointed out that the agreement contains provisions to construct an LNG terminal in Muthurajavela.
At midnight on the 17th of last month, an agreement was signed with an American company named New Fortress. None of us know what is in this agreement. Can such a terminal be constructed in Muthurajavela? The environmental system in Muthurajavela will be destroyed if concrete is laid on this land and large equipment is placed there.
We clearly
state that we are against plans to fill up 100 acres of land in Muthurajavela and construct a power plant there. On the other hand, we also have an issue with the conspirators within the government who signed this agreement at 12 midnight. We know what will happen when these lands are filled up and it starts to rain. People cannot live there.
Views regarding the opposition were expressed at a media briefing convened by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa had also responded to these statements.
සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මැතිතුමා ඔහුට හැකියාව ලැබුණේ නැහැ.
Sajid Premadasa was not able to fulfill his role as the opposition of this country. We too would like to have a good opposition that points out our mistakes and discusses with us if we are doing something wrong. The members of the opposition themselves are saying that they do not know where they are going. At least read the vistas of prosperity and splendor and see what we plan on doing for the people of this country. There may be different opinions among our members. I would like to state that we will discuss these opinions and do what is best for our country.
ඒ සිදු කරන්නට අපි සපත කරනවා කියන එක මේ වෙලාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න කැමතියි.
කොහොමද රට ගොඩ එන්නේ? කොහොමද අපි ජීවත් වෙන්නේ? කොහොමද අපි නැවතත් සෞභාග්‍ය සම්පන්න?
How can the country be revived? How can we live? How can we be prosperous again? How can we create a healthy nation? We have the answers to these questions. We have not just spoken about these solutions but proved them in our actions. Therefore, we do not need to falter at the face of these allegations. If our hearts are pure, our journey is correct, and if something is done for the country, that is the hope and expectation of the people. No one should falter because of statements or stories of certain individuals. I do not consider these unwanted criticisms. I have a lot of regard to new creative visions that strengthen the people.
ජනතාව ශක්තිමත් කරන නිර්මාණශීලී දර්ශනයක් එනකොට අන්න ඒවට මා සතුව ලොකු තැනක්.
The opposition leader expressed these views while attending an event to hand over appointment letters to electoral organizations of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya.
Small-scale rice mill owners today announced their prices of rice. How much are they willing to sell a kilogram of rice for? We'll bring you the details after this short commercial break.
Bellboy's got you covered. Download Bellboy today to get all your household appliance fixing and repairs done. Now available on Android and iOS.
Welcome back to the news. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has released approximately $50 million to two state banks for the clearance of essential food items held up at the Colombo port.
According to the State Minister for Consumer Protection, Lasantha Alagiyavanna, there are approximately 800 shipping containers with essential items held up at the port. The State Minister also said the move comes after a proposal put forward by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa during a cabinet meeting. Meanwhile, it was revealed today at a press conference attended by Minister Rohita Abegunawardena that importers have not been able to obtain dollars from certain banks. The meeting was held at the Ministry of Ports with the participation of importers and officials. The minister spoke to the governor of the central bank over the phone regarding this issue.
දැන් එයාලට තියෙන එකම ප්‍රශ්නය මේ වන විට බැංක් ඔෆ් සිලෝන් ඔක්කොම ඩොලර්ස් ටික දීලා තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට අමානා බැංක් වගේ බැංක්ස් කීයක් විතර දීලා නැද්ද මිස්ටර් රාජේන්ද්‍ර? බැංක් 6ක් විතර පැන්නේසියා, සෙලාන්, MDB, HN ඔව්. ලේන මේ මට ඕන ටෙක්ස්ට් එකක් යවන්න පුළුවන් මේ යවලා තියෙන ඔක්කොම බැංක්ස් ටික දැන් මොකද මේක දැන් වරායේ තියෙන කොටත් සමහරට එක්ස්පයර් වෙන්න පුළුවන් මේ සමහර බහන්න. BOC දීලා තියෙනවා. People's Bank දුන්නද? නෑ. People's Bank එච්චර නෑ. ඔය අර අපි කියපු බැංක්ස් ටික තමයි මේ නිවන් තියෙන්නේ. ඕකේ. Thank you. ඔව් දැන් People's Bank එකට දීලා තියෙනවා. සභාපතිතුමා එතනට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. දැන් සභාපතිතුමාට කියන්නම්කෝ ඔය බැංක්ස් වලට ඉක්මනටම ඉෂුව කරන්න කියලා.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today instructed the governor of the central bank to provide relief to minimize the import restrictions currently imposed on non-essential goods and equipment. The Prime Minister's office said that the Prime Minister had given these instructions in view of the difficulties faced by businessmen and the public due to the current restrictions on imports of non-essential goods and equipment. The statement issued by the Prime Minister's office said the governor of the central bank, Ajit Niwal Kabral, is scheduled to present the relevant solutions. The governor of the central bank, Ajit Niwal Kabral, is to also unveil the 6-month roadmap for ensuring macroeconomic and financial system stability on the 1st of October 2021.
A team of representatives of the European Union are currently in Sri Lanka. The delegation met with opposition leader Sajid Premadasa and a group of opposition parties yesterday. They also held discussions with Minister of Justice, President's Counsel Ali Sabri. The delegation is in the country to evaluate whether the GSP Plus concession granted to Sri Lanka should be extended.
The meeting with the opposition leader took place at the opposition leader's office in Colombo. Issuing a statement, he noted that he informed the delegation that the Samagi Jana Balawege would continue to play the role of a responsible modern opposition. The two sides had lengthy discussions on the COVID-19 situation in the country, and the leader of the opposition called on the delegates to provide the necessary support for the progress of the country. He has requested the visiting delegation not to discontinue the GSP Plus concessions granted to Sri Lanka. The delegation met with a group including parliamentarian R. Sambandan in Colombo yesterday.
The delegation wanted to inquire into the status of human rights in the country. They have already decided to revoke the GSP Plus concession, and the reason for that is that although the government promised in 2017 that the Prevention of Terrorism Act will be revoked, even after 4 years, this has not been done. That is the reason why this decision was reached. We said that this act must be revoked immediately. Actions under this act are extremely unfair. Now they have started using this act again. Also, the detainees under this act must be released. We informed the delegation about militarization. Despite the fact that these actions and decisions have been taken by the government, the EU will take action against all the people. It is only in the face of such pressure that the government will change their ways and allow the people in the country to live freely.
Sri Lanka had exported commodities worth 2.08 billion euros to European Union nations in 2020. Textile exports accounted for 1.08 billion euros but recorded a sharp drop from 1.2 billion euros in 2019. Accordingly, the absence of GSP Plus concessions will further impact the textile industry that is grappling with the effects of COVID-19. Plastics and rubber exports accounted for 293 million euros, while the food and machinery industries recorded exports amounting to more than 100 million euros. Currently, Sri Lanka enjoys the GSP Plus facility granted by the European Union. This means Sri Lankan products are exempted from taxes in the European market. The GSP Plus facility was removed for Sri Lanka in 2010 before being granted in 2017 under certain conditions. The EU said it would monitor Sri Lanka's moves to amend the Prevention of Terrorism Act and the implementation of 5 conventions. But now, the EU Parliament has adopted a resolution seeking to consider the temporary withdrawal of Sri Lanka's GSP Plus status. The resolution notes that Sri Lanka has excessively applied the Prevention of Terrorism Act without adhering to international human rights principles. The resolution also called for a rigorous, impartial and complete investigation into the 2019 April 21st attacks in line with international legal standards, and calls furthermore for those against whom there is evidence of culpability to promptly be brought to trial, and for those whom there is insufficient evidence to be released. The resolution also calls Sri Lanka to implement several other recommendations.
The new Securities and Exchange Commission Act came into force on the 21st of September. This is the first consolidated act since the original Securities and Exchange Commission Act number 36 of 1987. Here are some of the provisions of the new act.
A market institution has been defined in the Act as an exchange, clearing house or central depository. The definition of a market intermediary is wide. It includes a managing company, margin provider, stockbrokers, credit rating agencies and underwriters, or even corporate finance advisors. The Act also introduces civil sanctions for capital market offences. The previous Act only provided for criminal offences for such offences where the burden of proof was very high, and as such getting a conviction for a capital market offence was extremely hard. However, with the introduction of civil sanctions under the new Act, provisions have been included for the recovery of losses caused as a result of capital market offences. The fine imposed on a person who is convicted for market misconduct has also been increased to 10 million rupees. The Act includes provisions for the Securities and Exchange Commission to issue a freezing order. If a person is being investigated for a contravention of a provision of the Act, rule, regulation or directive, the SEC may issue a freezing order preventing the disposal of assets or entering into any transaction. The Act has also empowered the SEC to impose administrative sanctions for contravention of any provision of the Act, rules, regulations, directive or written notice. The administrative sanctions may be imposed in the form of a penalty up to 50 million rupees, a reprimand or restitution. The Colombo Stock Exchange's all-share price index recorded another all-time high today after it reached 9,433 basis points. The benchmark index gained 94 basis points, a 1.01% increase compared to yesterday's closing. The more liquid S&P SL20 index gained 60 basis points to close at 3,504, a 1.74% increase compared to yesterday's closing. The stock market reported a turnover of more than 5.9 billion rupees today. The major contributors to the market gain were LOLC Holdings, John Keel's, Brown's Investments, Selinco Insurance and Melster Corp.
Sri Lanka's central government debt had climbed to 104% of the gross domestic product by June 2021 from 101% in December 2020, based on the latest national income estimates and debt data.
Sri Lanka's nominal GDP for the 12 months ending June was 15.9 trillion rupees, while total debt had grown to 16.56 trillion rupees. Foreign debt in rupee terms went up to 6.63 trillion rupees from 6.0 trillion rupees, despite a net payback of rupees as the rupee fell. The increase in central government debt does not take into account the fall in foreign reserves, which makes net debt go up. Sri Lanka's central bank has also been entering into swaps, taking on additional debt.
Sri Lanka's Agriculture Minister Mahinda Nandalutgamage has announced the suspension of organic fertilizer imports from China that was to be brought down for the Maha season. According to the Agriculture Minister, this decision was reached after the laboratory tests revealed the presence of harmful bacteria in the stocks of organic fertilizer samples that were brought to the country.
The government recently decided to award the contract to import organic fertilizer to a Chinese company named Qingdao Sivin Biotech Group Company Limited. Samples from the Chinese company tested by the National Plant Quarantine Service revealed the presence of harmful bacteria on 2 occasions. The Director General of Agriculture said that 10 samples submitted by companies for the importation of liquid nitrogen organic fertilizer as well as solid fertilizer have been confirmed to be in line with quality standards. We have submitted samples from a number of companies for the importation of liquid organic fertilizer and solid fertilizer through private companies. We are very happy that some samples submitted by the companies are in line with our quality standards, and we are hoping to import them according to the provisions of the Plant Quarantine Act.
Can liquid fertilizer be brought to Sri Lanka?
There is only one quality for the importation of organic fertilizer. This is Law 17-04 of the Standards Institute. You can only import solid fertilizer that can undergo sterilization. I do not think that the Standards Institute has drafted standards for this importation of liquid fertilizer. There is only standards set for the liquid fertilizer produced using local raw material and not for imports.
Can fertilizer samples confirmed to be in line with quality standards be trusted without question?
The main danger here is that we do not have the procedures to identify all harmful bacteria. We can only identify a limited number of harmful bacteria in these samples at laboratories in the country. So if someone is saying that there are no harmful bacteria in these samples, we cannot believe that because we cannot identify some harmful bacteria. I believe if they are going to import organic fertilizer again, the threat is still remaining.
Three tests carried out to import organic fertilizer to the country have yielded negative results. The second sample was taken for test with police protection because there were claims that the samples were injected. The results have returned. The report shows that it contains Erwinia as well. Potato cultivation in the hill country was almost destroyed in the past. They are trying to bring that Erwinia to the country again. This is a suspicious report. The report says it contains coliform bacteria below the expected mark of 10. Coliform bacteria can be found in animal and human feces. They say that it is a fertilizer extracted from seaweed. However, animal and human feces in fertilizer extracted from seaweed. This is why I'm saying that they are trying to bring down the Chinese laboratory to Sri Lanka.
ලංකාවට ගේනවයි කියලා.
Will there be a shortage of fertilizer in the coming Maha season? A group of farmers in Diyaviddagama Dehiyattakandiya expressed their opposition in this manner, demanding solutions for the fertilizer crisis.
පට්ටි ගොන්නු කුසි කර්මය වනසනවා පොර දීලා කට හදපන් දියව දියව පොර දියව
A group of indigenous community members also joined the protest. Farmers in Eggaloya and Polgasara in the Ampara district have been helpless as they have not received fertilizer to cultivate their lands against a backdrop where they have already prepared their lands for cultivation.
අපි තාම මේ දෙගිරියාවෙන් ඉන්නේ අපිට දැන් රජය මේ වෙනකොට අපිට කිසිම විසඳුමක් දීලා නැහැ බඩිරුං ගොවියෝ විදිහට අපි ඒකින්ද අපි කියන්නේ රජය හැකි ඉක්මනින් අපිට මේකට විසඳුමක් දෙන්න නැත්නම් අපි තව ටික කාලයක් බලන්නේ අපි සියලුම ගොවි සංවිධාන පාරට බැලලා අපි ලොකු විප්ලවයක් අපි අරගලයක් කරනවා
අපි අක්කර 4-5 වැඩ කරපු මිනිස්සු දැන් අක්කර භාගයක්වත් කරගන්න විදියක් නැහැ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ බඩකට පුරව ගන්නවා අපි අහිංසක මිනිස්සු සදාටම අපි අනාථයි අද වේල නැහැ අපි මහ පොළොව කොටලා අවුරුද්දකට වතාව වගාව කරගත්තේ නැහැ.
Small and medium-scale rice mill owners convened a media briefing today and announced their prices for rice after the control price set by the government was removed.
We propose to purchase a kilo of nadu from farmers at 60 rupees and sell it to the consumers at 107 rupees. We will purchase a kilo of samba paddy from farmers at 70 rupees and sell it to the consumers at 130 rupees, while a kilo of kiri samba will be purchased from farmers at 80 rupees and sold to consumers at 150 rupees.
හාල් කිලෝ එක රුපියල් 150ක් වගේ මිලක් තමයි අපි යෝජනා කරන්නේ. අද පෞද්ගලික ඒකාධිකාරියක් විසින්
A monopoly has been set up and they have begun to publicly decide the price of rice. Do people really have to appoint a government if these sort of things are happening? The government should not put themselves in such a position. The government has the power. They have a 2/3 majority. When the government has all of this power, they have bowed down to this monopoly and allowed them to decide the fate of farmers and consumers. Does the government have a right to do such a thing? We are forced to speak out at a time when successive governments have fed and bred those poisonous snakes since 1994, and when the venom of these snakes have now affected the innocent consumers in this country. They are going to bring down 100,000 metric tons of rice from overseas to solve this issue. These stocks of rice are not manufactured using organic fertilizer. We do not know what will happen to those stocks.
Convening a media briefing yesterday, large-scale rice mill owners announced their prices for rice. Accordingly, they announced that 1 kilogram of nadu rice will be sold at 115 rupees, samba rice at 140 rupees, and kiri samba rice will be sold at 165 rupees.
If the price of rice begins to increase daily, the responsibility of providing rice to the consumers at a fair price will be with the large-scale rice mill owners. This responsibility will also be with the intermediaries. Also, if the large-scale rice mill owners and the intermediaries increase the prices of rice, they need to take responsibility for that. We are not certain if the prices that they announced yesterday will be maintained. They can change the prices of rice daily, and they will do it. We have no faith in them because of how they have increased the prices in the past. The JVP said that farmers or consumers did not benefit from the rice crisis in the country. Leader of the JVP, Andrukumara Dissanayake, pointed out how the benefit of all of this accrued to large-scale rice mill owners. Just like a mountain of ice dissolving, his true nature is beginning to show. A state of emergency was announced and rice mills were raided. They put on shows by showing how rice was being loaded onto lorries. The president is mesmerized by these media circuses. Gotabaya Rajapaksa
is a media fiction. The Minister of Agriculture on a number of occasions shouted in Parliament that they brought under control the rice mill mafia in the country. He also said that not a single grain of rice will be imported. These are all lies. They also imposed a control price and said that paddy cannot be sold for less than 50 rupees. They said that they will raid people who do it. They said that the price of paddy is 50. They said the price of nadu is 98, samba is 103 and kiri samba is 125 rupees. What did the farmers do? They sold their stocks of paddy with their eyes filled with tears. The farmers sold their paddy for cheap prices. A kilo of paddy even sold for as low as 44, 42 or even 40 rupees. They threatened the farmers, saying that if paddy is not sold at the price set by the government, they will not be given the fertilizer subsidy. Now the paddy is not with the farmers. The largest stocks of paddy are with the rice mill owners. Now what are they doing? They are removing the control price on rice. If paddy was purchased for cheap, the consumers must get the rice for cheap. Now the consumers also do not have the opportunity to purchase rice at a cheap price. The farmers were not able to get a fair price for their harvest, and the consumers can't purchase rice at a fair price. What happened here? We can see that billions of rupees have been distributed among rice mill owners and the ministers who supported them. Do you think that these things would have been done for any other reason? They always represented the mafias. How can the price of rice be controlled? They must destroy the monopoly in purchasing paddy and issuing rice to the market. There needs to be state intervention for that. But they are not working with such a vision. We don't need leaders to bring down rice from overseas when there is no proper mechanism for the production and distribution of rice. A wholesaler in Fort can even do this. He might even do it better.
The ruling faction's response regarding the matter.
නිකුත් කර තිබුණු සියලු ගැසට් පත්‍ර අවලංගු කරන්න.
All the Gazette notifications that were issued were withdrawn. We cannot afford to destroy businessmen who are operating rice mills after investing in them. We can impose a certain price if the major businessmen agree with it. Consumers will be able to purchase rice at that price. They showed their social responsibility by taking responsibility for it.
පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා මේ මිල පිළිබඳව අපි වගකීනවා කියන එක මං හිතනවා ඒ වෙලාවේ ඒ අය පෙන්නේ තමන්ගේ සමාජ වගකීම පිළිබඳව.
ආණ්ඩුව දනගස්සන ඕනේ සාමාන්‍ය වාල් ව්‍යාපාරිකයෝ ඉඳලා.
නෑ කවුද කියන්නේ?
දේශපාලකයෝ උන් එක ඩීල් ගන්න කතා කරන්නේ.
කවුද කියන්නේ?
ඔය දැන් මොළදින්ගේ කණ්ඩායම කිව්වනේ යම් මිලක් ගැන. ඔබතුමාත් ඒක හොඳයි වගේ ලයින් එකේ.
නෑ නෑ මම එහෙම නෙවෙයි මම කියන්නේ ඔබතුමා.
No, it doesn't matter which god you worship as long as the god helps you. There's an adage that a farmer is fit to rule. Unfortunately, we do not allow this to happen. Isn't it better that they get 62 rupees and 50 cents? I think the consumer should contribute towards uplifting the standards of life of the farmers as well.
මැදිහත් වීමක් කළ යුතුයි කියන විශ්වාසය තියෙනවා.
මහින්දානන්ද මහත්තයා ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වා
Mahindananda Alutgamage said that he will not import a single grain of rice and that he will resign if something like that is done. They had to reverse that gazette the day before yesterday. They cannot control a few businessmen even after imposing a state of emergency. They are close friends of the government after all. We would like to point out that there is no point in continuing the state of emergency. Since we are facing a threat of having the GSP concession revoked, why can't they lift the state of emergency just like they reversed the gazette?
The milk powder crisis still remains a crisis. Long queues were seen opposite shops that supply local milk powder today as well.
මේක පිළිපිටි වැඩි කරගන්න මේක හංගන වගේ පේන්නේ පාරිභෝගිකයන් හිතලා සාධාරණයක් කරන එකයි තියෙන්නේ.
අපි තමයි ඉතින් මේ ඡන්දේ දීලා මේ තත්ත්වෙට ගෙන්නුවේ කට්ටියව. ගෙනලා දැන් අපිට එන්න අසාධාරණයක් නේ.
ජීවත් වෙන්න හරි අමාරුයි හැමතැනම පෝලිං වලට ගියොත් අපේ කාලේ ඉවරයි කොම්පාලකයන්ගේ වරද.
Minister of Public Security, retired Rear Admiral Sarath Veerasekara, has instructed the Inspector General of Police to carry out an investigation on a group of officials attached to the Criminal Investigations Department.
Minister Sarath Veerasekara has given this instruction to the IGP as attempts were made to summon a group of journalists to the Criminal Investigations Department based on a complaint made by Minister Bandula Gunawardena. Minister of Trade Bandula Gunawardena had made this complaint, claiming that he has been discredited due to the reports of revelations made by the former Executive Director of the Consumer Affairs Authority, including the garlic scam. However, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa had instructed not to summon the group of journalists to the Criminal Investigations Department. Minister Sarath Weerasekara had instructed the IGP to start an investigation as the officials at the CID have not adhered to the directives of the Prime Minister. According to the Ministry of Public Security, Minister Sarath Weerasekara had also given instructions to the IGP to hand over the ongoing investigations on the garlic scam conducted by the Paliagoda Special Crimes Unit to the Criminal Investigations Department.
Just like the Somalian pirates are robbing ships, an American citizen and his family are robbing our country. Just as we think that the garlic scam will fade away, on comes the rice mafia. Then comes the Keravalapitia power plant controversy. Something else will also come to light in the future. But now, what has happened? These rulers will take steps to stop the reportage of these matters. This is a threat to media outlets. I honestly do not know whether there is a point of Minister of Mass Media apologizing for this matter. The other side of oppression is helplessness and the failure of rulers.
Will the prices of fuel increase?
As of the
31st of August, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation incurred a loss of 70 billion rupees. The dollar is appreciating. On the other hand, the fuel price in the world market continues to increase. Since the 11th of June, the price of fuel has increased by over 20%. If we are unable to continue to bear the loss, we will have to pass it on to the consumers.
Do we have foreign reserve to purchase fuel?
Although Sri Lanka has been facing a foreign reserve deficit during the recent past, we did not face a shortage of fuel due to the government's policy decision taken by the government to spend foreign exchange reserves. The new governor of the central bank has also promised to provide $200 million to purchase fuel. Therefore, even if we face a foreign reserve deficit, the import of fuel will not be affected.
What is the mystery behind the disappearance of a police officer in Kotmale? News First, Senator Sena Naika reports.
A Newsfirst investigative team are looking into the disappearance of a police officer attached to the Kotmale police. He has been missing for over 20 days. He was last seen at the Gampala Base Teaching Hospital. The Newsfirst team visited the Gampala Base Teaching Hospital and inquired from the director of the hospital regarding the hospitalization of the police officer.
The Gampala Base Teaching Hospital, the location where the authorities last saw Mr. Suppai Langovan, who disappeared on the 8th of September. He was admitted to this hospital in the morning and was subjected to the normal procedure that any patient would have to go through. According to the director of this hospital, his son was with him for 4 hours and had left the hospital. However, a few minutes after his son left, Mr. Suppai Langovan too left this hospital.
What happened to this police officer? The police noted that the investigations into the disappearance are being carried out and that mobile phone usage data will be analyzed to uncover any further details. The police added that a court order was obtained from the Gampala Magistrates Court regarding this. The police officer who is reported missing is Suppaya Ilangovan, a 56-year-old resident of the Pundulu area in Kotmale. He is a father of 3. He had been admitted to this hospital on the 8th of this month. His son had accompanied him to the hospital. After being admitted, he was reported missing around 11 AM on the same day. This was revealed when the hospital had informed the police that he was not found to be in the ward where he was admitted to. He was admitted claiming he felt numbness in his leg and his arm. The Pundulu police, the Gampala police and the Kotmale police have deployed teams to look for the missing police sergeant.
The Court of Appeal ordered today to further retain the female elephant Sujiva and her calf till the 23rd of November, when the case will be heard again. The order was made today with regard to the hearing of a writ petition filed by the Centre for Environmental Justice and the Eco-Culture Studies. They were contesting the legal ownership of the elephants' supposed owners and also alleging infringement of laws that govern the protection of elephants in the country.
Accordingly, the court hearing today is linked with the controversial release of 14 elephants held under the Department of Wildlife and the Department of Zoological Gardens back to their owners. The release of the elephants by the Colombo Additional Magistrates Court and the Matale Magistrates Court was made on the basis of a recent Gazette notification published by the State Minister of Wildlife Protection, Wimalavira Disanayaka, which allows the registration and ownership of captive elephants if certain conditions are met. The petitioners argue that the new regulations under this Gazette notification is in direct violation of the protection of elephants granted by the Flora and Fauna Protection Ordinance and further enhances the possibility of acquiring and owning elephants illegally. The petitioners are also urging the Aegis Department and the police to conduct investigations into the manner in which the elephants were initially acquired by the owners and how this factor was overlooked by the authorities when granting the owners registration for the elephants under the 1991 Gazette notification, which again did not circulate through Parliament. Including the 14 elephants in question, the ownership of 40 elephants had been contested in the recent times under the same circumstances. Another Court of Appeal order stated that the registration of the 15 elephants ordered to be released by the Magistrates Court should be suspended until the end of the trial. The parties who appeared to intervene in the case on the next day were ordered to file the necessary documents and to file objections, and the case is postponed until the 13th of October.
The assistant software engineer of Epic Lanka, a suspect in the case regarding the deletion of data of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority that was stored on the Lanka government cloud, has been remanded until the 6th of October. The case was taken up today before Colombo Additional Magistrate Shalini Pereira.
The Attorney General's Department informed court today that the forensic investigations have revealed that the deletion of over 11,000 NMRA files relating to medicines and medicinal drugs was not a mistake and was a deliberate act. Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Apiris said the revelation was made in investigations carried out by the CID with the assistance of 3 professors in IT. Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Apiris informed court that the suspect assistant software engineer has deleted files from his residence for a period of 5 hours from 3:45 a.m. on the 9th of July 2021 until 10:24 a.m. the same day. He said it was done on the needs of the medical mafia and it can be construed as cyber terrorism. He also told the court that the suspect had tendered in his resignation to Epic Lanka Technologies Private Limited 10 days before committing the offence and was preparing himself to take up employment elsewhere. The DST noted the investigations ruled that this was not a mistake but a deliberate act.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and God bless.